joining me now is lawmaker and Navy veteran who was inside of that very briefing, Republican Congressman Tony Gonzales of Texas. Congressman, thank you for being with us. You probably can't share much from that briefing, but as you watched the president in his briefing just a second ago, how did what he said strike you compare to what you've been hearing today?
Yeah, I can't get into the details, but I can give you the overall sentiment is two things. One, in a bipartisan manner, we all agree that every American needs to come home. That's one. And two, we need to not look at any arbitrary deadlines. Whenever that date is, that date is. We can't put guardrails on that. We have to go to all parts of Afghanistan in order to do that. Look, Afghanistan is very personal to me. I served 5 years in Afghanistan. It's very personal to many of us that serve there in a correspondent capacity and an NGO capacity. This is the part that the administration doesn't understand. What happens in Afghanistan directly impacts the region, the world, and back home here in the United States.
I think Americans have that exact same sentiment. They feel like what they're hearing in these briefing rooms has nothing to do with the reality on the ground. And I think they're seeing that around this August 31st deadline. You said that should be out the window because that's not the objective. And yet in this briefing just a few minutes ago, the president reiterated, we're going to get it all done by August 31st. Is there any planet on which that happens?
There is not. And look, there is a disconnect between the warfighters and the president and his messaging. It's complete chaos up there. This is what I'm hearing on the ground. And I'll remind you, many of our offices, many of our congressional offices have basically turned into operational offices, mine included. So on the ground, this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing the State Department is telling Afghan interpreters to stay in place, right? Don't make it to Kabul, stay in place. What I'm telling folks is you need to get out as soon as possible. Whether that's to Pakistan, whether that's elsewhere, you need to get out as soon as possible because this situation is only going to get worse. It's only going to spiral as time goes on. But there's mixed messages, and the president has it wrong.
Congressman, maybe the biggest mixed message, in my opinion, is the idea that we're not going to trust a word the Taliban says, but we're going to work with them to get people out. Again, reporting on the ground is telling us they're not letting Afghans who we want to get out even get into the airport at this point. What has to happen realistically to make sure that we can keep our commitment to get every last American and ally out of Afghanistan?
Look, you have the Taliban that literally after they took over Kabul were yelling death to Americans in the street. Nothing has changed in 20 years. And to think all of a sudden that they're going to be welcoming partners, they're not. And we can't treat them as such. What we have to do is we have to be firm and we have to be bold. And we have to ensure every American gets out, no matter the cost, no matter what part of Afghanistan that they're at. Also, our Afghan partners. You know, the other thing is what happens in Afghanistan impacts the world. What worries me is our southern border is wide open. As this chaos continues to expand, you're going to see terrorism spread throughout the globe. The last thing any of us want to see is another 9/11 due to this administration's debacle at this withdrawal.
Congressman, really quickly, we have a number of evacuees from Afghanistan who will be coming to the United States, non-citizens. The president talked about screening them to make sure that they're not a threat. Do you have any confidence that we're going to be able to keep that commitment to make sure the U.S. isn't threatened, or are you concerned about the screening process right now?
Yeah, no, I am very concerned on it. Matter of fact, Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, is going to be one of those locations. And I will be visiting Fort Bliss on Friday and Saturday to see it firsthand. One of the parts of Congress is the oversight and compliance is to see that. We have to make sure every person is vetted completely, but we also have to stand with our Afghan allies, those that have fought alongside us for decades. We have to make sure that they get out safely, that their lives are not in jeopardy, but they have to be vetted.
Congressman, really quickly, I just have to ask you, your office is working on helping people get out of Afghanistan. What are the messages you're getting? What are you seeing on the ground when it comes to being able to help get folks out of there?
Literally, my phone has been blowing up nonstop, all hours of the night, with people essentially begging for their lives, you know, trying to fight and scratch and claw in order to make their way out. And we've been working with them, like in a very operational capacity to help them get out to the nearest location. In many cases, I mean, Afghanistan is very corrupt. So in many cases, they have to have enough resources in order to pay off these different checkpoints to try to get to where they need to be. Right now, we're telling people, get out as soon as possible. do not hunker down, because things are only going to get worse.
Congressman, thank you for picking up those phone calls. Godspeed in everything you're doing. We appreciate it. Congressman Gonzales, thank you.
God bless you.